The anomaly first appeared as a flicker on the edge of deep space surveillance arrays orbiting Jupiter's moons. At first, it was dismissed, a system glitch, perhaps a solar flare echo. But as the readings multiplied and clustered with uncanny symmetry, doubt vanished. Something vast was coming, and it was coming fast. At NORAD's subterranean command center, Commander Lia Tran stared at the data with the grim stillness of someone reading a death sentence. Dozens of contacts, hundreds, then thousands. The AI-assisted radar struggled to keep up. They moved with terrifying precision, like a school of predatory fish, converging with coordinated silence from all sides. No demands, no broadcast, just presence. By the time world governments acknowledged the scale of the threat, the outermost defense satellites were already gone, blinked out of existence with pinpoint orbital strikes. The moon's mining colonies went dark within minutes. One escape pod managed a garbled transmission. We weren't worth talking to. The first visual confirmation came from a Chinese lunar telescope. A vast, serpentine fleet, ships the size of islands, sleek and dark as obsidian, each pulsing with a cold bioluminescence, drifting in ordered lines toward Earth like a funeral procession. They bore no insignia, no flags, no identifiable language. Just one purpose. Earth called them the 7700, because that was how many came. 3 days after contact, the sky bled. Las Vegas evaporated in a pillar of white light. Sao Paulo folded in on itself like paper caught in a whirlpool. Istanbul simply vanished, leaving a crater that hissed and steamed for weeks. The strikes weren't random. They dismantled the spine of global infrastructure. Energy grids, military installations, communication arrays. In one synchronized breath, the world was made blind and dumb. General Elias Rourke stood in the bunker beneath Colorado's Rockies, arms crossed over a chest that bore 4 stars and 2 decades of scars. His face, carved in granite, watched the holographic feed flicker with ruin. Around him, aides barked into dead calms, praying for responses that never came. His voice broke through the noise like thunder. Someone talked to me about a pattern. Anything. A voice answered, young and crisp. Lieutenant Nia Sullivan, head of tactical analysis, stepped forward. They're targeting technological clusters, high-density nodes. They're severing our capacity to coordinate, breaking the spine before the limbs can twitch. Rourke turned. You're telling me we're livestock in a slaughterhouse? Sullivan didn't blink. Yes, sir. But we're not completely unarmed. In a side lab 2 floors down, Dr. Ashok Patel worked with frantic precision. A theoretical physicist with little love for military formality, he had been seconded to the Defense Science Initiative years ago for his work in quantum energy manipulation. Now, he stood before the charred remains of an alien scout drone recovered near Quito. Its hull shimmered with what looked like living circuitry. His instruments screamed in frustration trying to define it. This isn't metallurgy, he muttered, brushing a gloved hand over the surface. It's bioconductive, semi-sentient. Not just a ship. It's thinking. Behind him, a voice drawled. That's great. Can it be killed? Patel didn't turn. Everything that thinks can die. We just need to understand how it thinks first. The voice belonged to Felix Marlowe, a cyber warfare specialist with a criminal record sealed tighter than Fort Knox. He had been pulled from a black site and promised clemency in exchange for results. He smiled like someone who didn't care if the world burned, as long as he got to dance in the flames. Good news, he said, tapping away on a jury-rigged console. I've piggybacked onto the alien signal matrix. It's not encrypted because they never thought they'd need to. I can hear them talking. Not in words, in frequencies. Like a hive. Patel looked up. Can you talk back? Marlowe grinned. Already did. Fed them bad intel. Redirected one of their cruisers into a glacier. Got pretty. Meanwhile, in orbit, the Galactic fleet loomed, unmoving for hours, as if considering, testing. The silence stretched like a blade. Then the voice came, not through sound, but vibration. An electric tremor through the planet's magnetic field, translated by instruments into words. It broadcast once, from every screen, every speaker, every frequency. Your species is unregulated. Your world is to be quarantined. Compliance is fatal. Resistance, expected. Across the globe, survivors huddled in what shelters remained. Soldiers dug in around burning capitals. Civilians scavenged through ash and ruin. Yet amidst the horror, patterns emerged. Alien units moved in rigid structure, relying on synchronized command. Cut the command, the limbs flailed. Several units crashed when local interference fields were triggered, scrambling their coordination. Hope, slim and flickering, was born not from brute strength but from chaos. In a burned-out London district, a resistance cell intercepted an alien crawler. With modified microwave towers, they blinded it, then swarmed it with repurposed mining explosives. Screamed, not in pain but in warning. Other drones retreated. Why? Back in Colorado, Sullivan watched the feeds. They're afraid of losing assets. They don't expect loss. It confuses them. Rourke nodded slowly. So let's give them confusion. Let's make every inch of Earth a bad investment. They called it Project Wildfire. Not a grand counteroffensive, but 1,000 small, vicious cuts. Crowdsourced attacks. Cyber viruses seeded through surviving networks. Civilian hackers built ghost signals. Engineers turned subway tunnels into traps. Farmers turned pesticide drones into kamikaze bombers. Everything became a weapon. Everything became resistance. In the chaos, Marlowe found something else, buried deep in the alien network. A subroutine. Isolated. Conflicted. I think one of them doesn't agree with the war, he whispered. It's splintered. It's watching us. Patel's eyes narrowed. A defector? Or a spy, Marlowe replied. But either way, it's listening. Over the next 2 weeks, Earth burned, but it did not break. From the ruins of Mumbai to the snows of Quebec, human resolve hardened like iron in fire. For every city that fell, another cell rose. The 7700 did not expect adaptation. They expected obedience or extinction. Humanity gave them neither. Then the impossible happened. A cruiser fell from orbit. Not shot down. Sabotaged from within. It crashed into the Mojave, tearing a glassy scar into the desert. From the wreckage emerged a figure, not entirely alien, not entirely machine. Tall, armored, dying. They found it crawling from the flames. Its voice was fractured, metallic, filled with pain. Wrong. We were wrong. Sullivan stood over it, rifle aimed, heart racing. Why are you here? It looked up at her with glowing eyes. To change everything. And then it collapsed. Across the stars, the fleet hesitated. And on Earth, for the first time since the sky began to fall, humanity took a breath that wasn't entirely filled with fear. Darkness had a different texture now. It wasn't merely the absence of light. It was the cold absence of certainty, of structure, of what had once made the world understandable. The night no longer promised peace. Only the shriek of engines overhead or the distant shimmer of plasma fire. Cities had become bones, silent and brittle, while forests flickered with ambushes and resistance broadcasts. Yet in that darkness something grew. A small fire crackled beneath a shattered overpass on the outskirts of Berlin. Around it huddled a knot of humanity. Soldiers in tattered uniforms, ex-civilians with rusted rifles, a child clutching a radio as though it were sacred. The leader of this cell, Corporal Alana Marek, had once been a history teacher. Now, she charted alien patrol routes on blood-stained maps, her voice calm, eyes hard. They think we're hiding, she murmured half to herself. But we're not hiding. We're waiting. They were bred for compliance, Echo had told him, voice warping through synthetic lungs. No self, no deviation. But deviation happened. I am the deviation. Patel didn't blink. And why help us? Echo tilted its head. Because your chaos is freedom. Patel didn't believe in chaos. He believed in equations. But chaos apparently had its uses. Marlowe had already dissected Echo's communications matrix, feeding chunks of its neural code into Earth's still-functioning satellite arrays. What he found was a weakness, a deep signal dependency running through every alien unit. a kind of spatial tether that allowed perfect coordination. Disrupt it, and their forces stuttered like broken clockwork. All they needed was a wide enough field, a powerful enough pulse, and something to deliver it. In what remained of Ukraine's aerospace facilities, engineers, hackers, and salvagers worked beneath the flickering shell of the sky. They called the project Black Sun, a retrofitted orbital shuttle, rebuilt with alien parts and a fusion core stolen from a disabled Empire carrier. Its purpose wasn't to destroy. It was to unmake the invaders' coherence. General Rourke stood at the launch bay a week before liftoff, staring at the skeletal ship with hands clasped behind his back. Beside him, Sullivan reviewed the targeting parameters. They wouldn't get another shot. They'll see us coming, she said. They always do, Rourke replied. The trick is making them care too late. Back in orbit, the Empire was shifting. The Supreme Commander, a towering being named Vexayar, watched Earth with clinical frustration. Its command bridge pulsed with data lights and real-time troop telemetry. It understood now that this planet would not fall like the others. Their resistance was irrational, inefficient, and alarmingly effective. The loss of Cruiser 311 hadn't just been tactical. It was ideological. Echo's defection had introduced a fault line into their collective psyche. Others had begun to hesitate. Not many, not loudly, but enough. Vexayar ordered recalibration. No more surgical precision. No more strategic avoidance of population centers. Earth would be burned, and the memory of its defiance wiped from the command archives. The day the decision came, the sky above Tokyo cracked open. Hundreds of ships descended like a mechanical swarm, their hulls blistering with thermal discharge. The city, already half in ruin, became a theater of screaming light. But Earth had learned. As the fleet dropped, Tokyo's underground exploded upward. Improvised railguns fired scavenged warheads. Microwave traps scrambled local command. Civilian units carried explosive vests into hangars and detonated at weak points identified by Echo. The cost was catastrophic. But for every 1,000 lives lost, a ship fell. Felix Marlowe monitored the engagement from a mobile data rig deep in the Urals. Smoke coiled around his chair, eyes flicking across signals. Then he saw it, an anomaly in the orbital command lattice. A ship drifting out of sync, its formation lagging. "Got you, bastard," he muttered. He sent a virus through a backdoor left open by Echo. A digital stiletto, crafted from Earth's chaos and Echo's treason. The command ship's hull blossomed with fire. Its stabilizers overloaded. It spiraled into the sea. Patel watched the footage with breathless awe. "Is it turning on itself?" "No," Marlowe said, lighting a cigarette with a trembling hand. "It's falling apart." Meanwhile, Sullivan had gathered 3 resistance cells in northern Canada, one of the few regions still free of heavy orbital oversight. There, they tested Black Sun's prototype disruptor in the field. The effect was immediate. Empire drones in a 3-mile radius collapsed, their limbs twitching as if trying to remember how to stand. "Scaling this," Sullivan said, "could end the war." The problem wasn't the tech. It was the delivery. They had one shuttle, one shot, and every Empire ship in orbit knew it was coming. The launch was timed during a solar eclipse, a blind spot in the alien surveillance net. As the sun dimmed, Black Sun rose, punching through clouds like a phoenix. Alien cruisers reacted, peeling off from Earth's upper atmosphere in tight pursuit. Inside Black Sun, 2 pilots sat strapped in, Lieutenant Commander Owen Keats and ex-smuggler Renka Zhou. Both had signed on knowing it was a one-way trip. As alien interceptors closed, Renka whispered a prayer in Mandarin. Keats just smiled. "Let's make them remember us." Black Sun breached the upper orbit. Target acquired. The Empire's primary signal relay platform, tethered to a lunar staging dock. If that node fell, their coherence would collapse across the hemisphere. Alien interceptors fired. Hulls breached. Renka screamed something no one understood. And then the pulse detonated. A ring of white lightning expanded outward like a scream made visible. Empire ships in its radius went dark. Crashed. Imploded. On Earth, drones stopped mid-step. Soldiers ran into alien lines with knives and fire and won. Vexar watched the data collapse, watched Earth swell in defiance. "This world," he murmured, "is incorrect." He ordered the final wave. All 7,700 ships. Everything. The sky filled with death. But Earth was no longer afraid. Earth was ready. Rourke issued the last directive from the Icelandic stronghold. Fall back to defensible zones. Draw them into choke points. Don't defeat them, dismantle them. In New York's wreckage, a resistance group lured an alien tank column into a subway tunnel rigged with thermite. In Nigeria, tribes united and used sonic warfare to scramble dropships. In the Antarctic wastes, where the final command relay was buried beneath alien alloy, Sullivan and Patel led a strike team. The closer they got, the stranger the air became. Static crawled across their skin. Echo walked beside them, not as a guide, but a warning. "This is the end," it said. "Of them, or of you." By the time they reached the relay, the final wave had landed. The war was no longer orbital. It was hand-to-hand, street-to-street. Humanity had no more surprises, no more tricks, just rage and memory. In one final act, Sullivan detonated the last amplifier. The relay cracked like an egg. Alien units froze mid-motion. Somewhere Vexar screamed, not in fear, in confusion. The galaxy's most perfect army had met something they could not calculate. And in the silence that followed, a signal went out, not to Earth but to the stars. Echo had sent it, a whisper through the void. "We are not yours." Earth bled. Earth burned. But Earth lived. And among the stars, something else began to stir. The stars were quieter now. Not silent, never that, but less crowded with threat, less crisscrossed with burning trails of warships and escape pods. After the fall of the 7700, the night sky belonged to Earth again. What remained of the Galactic Empire's fleet orbited in shattered rings, mute and tumbling, their symmetry ruined by a species that was never supposed to matter. But victory was a story told by survivors, and Earths were few. General Rourke leaned against the steel frame of what had once been a window, now a jagged hole in the remnants of the Reykjavik command hub. Snow filtered through the open air, falling in silence over shattered consoles and blood-streaked floors. He didn't flinch when Dr. Patel entered. They had long since moved past formalities. "They've begun scavenging," Patel said softly, nodding out toward the horizon where figures, children mostly, picked over the wrecks for metal, for fuel, for meaning. "Good," Rourke replied. "Let them take it all. Let them rebuild from it." Patel hesitated. "You know this isn't over." Rourke gave a dry smile. "It never is." Across the ocean, in a temporary outpost carved into the walls of an Appalachian cavern, Sullivan stood before a flickering map of the solar system. She marked orbital debris zones with chalk, her hands steady despite the pain in her ribs. The last assault had cracked 2 of them, but she refused to rest. Felix Marlowe sat nearby, his fingers dancing across salvaged alien tech hooked into an Earth-made laptop. The hybrid system coughed out data in bursts, telemetry, encryption, pulse analysis. He was decoding remnants of the Empire's last transmissions. "I think they called for reinforcements," he said after a long silence. Sullivan didn't look up. "From where?" Marlowe shrugged. "Beyond mapped space, maybe deeper into the galactic core. We never knew how big their empire really was. We still don't." "Then we prepare," she said. "Just like before. Except now we fight with their tools too." Echo, once an anomaly, had become a bridge. Not quite ally, not quite enemy. It now floated in a suspended chamber beneath the Andes, its containment more symbolic than practical. It had changed again, its body growing more translucent, its voice deeper, calmer. When Patel arrived with his questions, Echo opened its eyes. "They will come," it said. "How soon?" "Time is not their limitation. Interest is. You made them curious." That frightened Patel more than a fleet ever could. Earth had become a variable, a glitch in the galactic consensus. Other species had noticed. Transmissions trickled in from deep space, encrypted in alien tongues but carrying unmistakable urgency. Some were warnings, others invitations. One, oddly, was a poem. Across the globe, ruins were turning into enclaves. What was left of humanity moved in lines, on instinct, gathering, organizing, building strange new cities from steel and alien ceramic. Old borders had faded. Now there were only zones. Red for irradiated, blue for stable, green for habitable. Leadership had collapsed into cells. Rourke, Patel, Sullivan, they weren't generals or ministers now. They were anchors, trusted voices in the storm. But not everyone was rebuilding. Some were hunting. Far out in the Carpathians, a resistance splinter group calling themselves the Shard had begun tracking surviving Empire officers. Creatures stranded during the disruption, disconnected from their hive mind, reduced to instinct. Some tried to integrate, others went feral. The Shard executed both. They believed survival required vengeance. Redemption was weakness. When a scout team from Sullivan's unit crossed paths with the Shard near Bucharest, only one survivor returned. His voice shook as he spoke. They're not like us anymore. They don't want peace. They want blood. Sullivan went to confront them herself. She found their camp buried beneath layers of snow and rusted anti-air defenses. The Shard leader, a woman named Cara Vane, met her at the perimeter. Her armor was painted with the ash of a dozen cities. We lost everything, Cara said. Now we take everything. That's not war, Sullivan said. That's suicide. Then we die free. There was no agreement that day. Only silence, and the understanding that Earth's unity had always been temporary. They had won the right to argue, to fracture, and perhaps that too was victory. Above the Pacific, the orbital skeleton of Black Sun drifted, long since gutted by plasma fire, but a beacon still pulsed from its heart, broadcasting a signal designed by Marlowe and refined by Echo. A lure. The message was simple: we are here. Come see what we became. And something heard. 3 months after the fall, an object entered the solar system, subtle, fast, non-military. Not a ship in the traditional sense, but a shell of magnetic energy holding what might once have been a mind. It hovered above the moon, then slowly descended to Earth's edge. It did not land. It waited. Patel was among the first to approach. In a deep-sea exosuit retrofitted for space anomalies, he made his way across the barren edge of Greenland's shelf, where the object hovered just above the ice. Its surface rippled with unreadable script. As he neared, it spoke. Not in words, but in shape, folding space around him, offering symbols that rearranged themselves like puzzles. Patel understood none of it, but Echo did. From its chamber, it spoke into the interface, its voice somehow both local and universal. It asks, "What do you believe?" Patel hesitated. Impossibility. The shape shimmered, shifted, then it vanished. No weapon discharged. No threat remained. Just the knowledge that Earth had been seen. The world shifted again. More anomalies followed. Some hostile, some not. The remains of the Empire still twitched, trying to regrow like a severed limb. But Earth had changed its posture. No longer a backwater. No longer prey. It had teeth now, and memory, and something more dangerous than weapons. The future. In the rebuilt skeleton of Nairobi, children played in a courtyard shaped from melted starship wings. In what was once Detroit, a university reopened its first lecture titled "What We Thought We Knew About the Galaxy and Why We Were Wrong." On the border of the Sahara, nomads taught Empire machines to sing. Humanity didn't just survive. It evolved. Rourke walked the edge of a growing city, watching its neon spine rise toward the clouds. Patel stood beside him, older now, shoulders bent but eyes clear. "They'll come again," Rourke said. "Let them," Patel replied. "This time we'll be ready, not as victims, not even as victors, but as something the galaxy had never accounted for. An anomaly with purpose, a wound that wouldn't close, a planet that remembered what it meant to lose everything and still stand. And somewhere in the cold between stars, other eyes opened and watched.